You want me to put that on my todger?
This One's Wife. I'm thrilled to be back. Hello, I'm HG Tudor. We witnessed This One's Wife attending the Variety Power of Women event as she sashayed along the red carpet, wearing beige, milking the attention, and of course having to be moved along by her assistant, much to the delight of many observers. But it's interesting to see how this has been viewed by other publications such as the Toronto Star. They lead with the headline, an article by Sarah Lang, The Kit. I'm just thrilled to be back. This One's Wife's return to the red carpet feels decidedly pre-royal. You'd be forgiven for thinking you'd stepped into a time warp and straight back to 2016. There This One's Wife was, on a red carpet, smiling for photographers on the step and repeat, chatting with a microphone-wielding journalist about suits, radiating confidence in an off-the-shoulder bodycon dress, no hint of royal pomp or restraint. But you have not been catapulted back to the era of Drake's views and fur-lined slides. This happened just a few days ago. It all felt what was old is new again, that may have been entirely on purpose. Last Thursday evening, This One's Wife attended Variety magazine's Power of Women Gala. She was there as an alumni. She was named to the Entertainment magazine's list of honorees in 2022, but skipped the event, which took place a few weeks after Queen Elizabeth II's death. She wore a modern, elegant Proenza Schuler dress, reimagined for her in beige crepe from its leather original design, a sleek centre-parted bun, and a megawatt smile. Naturally, the rictus grin slapped upon her face as a consequence of the response to all of the fuel she was receiving. She even stopped for a red carpet interview with Variety's reporter. This industry is just so special, and you see how many women use the platform that they have and channel it for good, she said of the entertainment community. I'm just thrilled to be back in it. She also chatted about Suits' second life as a streaming mega hit, saying she has no idea why it's made such a huge resurgence. Well, at least she's being honest for once, because it's certainly nothing to do with her. We had a really fun time. I was on it for 7 seasons, so quite a bit, and it's hard to find a show you can binge watch that many episodes of these days, so that might have something to do with it, but good shows are everlasting. And then she seamlessly plugged her own future projects. We have so many exciting things on the slate, I can't wait until we can announce them. Future faking. A more forensic approach would have been to ask, why can't she announce them? Is it because there isn't actually anything? But as is often the case with these journalists, they soft soap. Indeed, it's often the case that the hard questions tend to be asked by less formal content creators, those on YouTube that undertake a forensic examination of what she does, those on blogs, those below the line that ask the pertinent questions. Too often, This One's Wife is given an easy ride. As I explained yesterday in relation to the Letterman video, you could not envisage her allowing herself to be subjected to such questioning. The fact is, certain narcissists can deal with such questioning quite readily. They're charming, they're sharp-witted, they have a razor-sharp mind, and they are hugely intelligent. Of course, it's often the case that you can spot the politician isn't answering the question, but they don't make themselves look necessarily foolish. We all know that if This One's Wife was subjected to a proper questioning, a presentation of her hypocrisies, her lies, and her revisions of history, she would flounder, that she most likely burst into tears, dole out a pity play, or get up and walk out. She simply doesn't have the cognitive function to be able to deal with them, other than say, that's not true, it's made up, that didn't happen, even when the evidence presents to the contrary. And when that first line of the twin lines of the narcissistic defense, denial, would be broken through by that evidence, she would be forced to move to an alternative manipulation, which would probably be to turn on the waterworks to engender sympathy and then retreat. I know many of you look forward to the day that somebody does start to actually pose these questions to her, but it may never happen. In order to maintain that control, her narcissist would never let anybody near her to ask those key questions. It might be a case that you would doorstep her, throw the questions at her, but of course, then you'd either be met by a one-off cheesy response. Remember when she was asked, "Are you proud of him?" at the Freedom Gala when she was wearing the overripe burst tomato dress, and she said, "I'm always proud of him," which of course the journalist asking the question was to suggest that there had been poor behaviour on the part of Harry, and therefore, are you proud of the way that your husband's behaving? And of course she just knocked that back by suggesting that she was always proud. Therefore, the attempt to get under her skin on that occasion failed. In other instances, she would just simply ignore the question, of course, because she doesn't feel compelled to answer. Where we might see this would be as if she entered the political sphere, as which she's repeatedly threatened. There, she would have to address these questions, and it's there she would be remorselessly torn apart. The article in the Toronto Star, however, continues by explaining, later inside the event, this one's wife posed for snaps with fellow attendees. Yes, that was her, with Real Housewives of Beverly Hills star Garcelle Beauvais. And yes, you could interpret that as a further hint that this one's wife's poised to launch the Monty Shit Show edition of the franchise, and was spotted mingling in the crowd. So far, so 2016. Beyond the bubble of the event, however, there were plenty of reminders that the year is indeed 2023, and this one's wife is now a lightning rod for criticism. Like, for example, suggestions that she staged the appearance to coincide with The Crown's final season premiering on Netflix, an interesting twist on the theory that she and Harry do their best to steal the limelight whenever the royals have something big going on, and particularly head-scratching given their own ongoing production deal with Netflix. As we know, this one's wife regularly steals the thunder and seeks to upstage people. That's what narcissists do. They can't stand it to be about other people. Or, if you prefer, she did it to upstage Kate while her sister-in-law was hosting a big summit for her early childhood development work, showing up looking glam and glow in contrast to Kate's dispiriting public drubbing for looking old at a Remembrance Day event. Certain corners of social media, picked up by GB News, tried to turn an out-of-context clip of this one's wife being tapped on the shoulder by a staffer into an example of raging entitlement. She smiles at her, how dare she, but doesn't immediately heed the supposed cue to move along the red carpet. Notice here that this piece, probably as a consequence of some kind of press release that's been issued by this one's wife, is seeking to, and I believe the phrase is, clap back at her critics. This is something that this one's wife does regularly, and shows once again the regard that she has for what is said about her in the media and on social media. Wherever she is criticised, and legitimately so, then swiftly follows something to try and counter that, as she seeks to nullify the threat to control posed by the original comment. For example, I've regularly ridiculed her for being the Duchess of Industrial Beige because she's boring. Not long after that, she started to talk about why she had selected beige rather than colourful outfits with regard to her appearances within the royal family. It demonstrates that she does take notice of what is said about her and responds accordingly, because what she pays regard to threatens her need for control. The article continues by explaining that predictable background rumble is exactly why this one's wife and her team at WME, the talent agency signed with, might be making a concerted effort to normalise her being out in the world. Take the paparazzi snaps we've seen over the past few months, which tell a story of a woman going about her normal life, by wealthy Hollywood standards anyway, taking vacations, catching concerts with pals, dinner with her man, strolling around a farmer's market, watching a 4th of July parade with her kids. Insert any celebrity's name, Reese, any of the Jennifers, Angelina even, and it would all be utterly par for the Us Weekly course. It is quite remarkable, however, for this one's wife, who for a long time seemed to exist only within the capacious walls of her Monty Shit Show mansion. This period of laying low was almost certainly to protect her well-being and starve the tabloids of oxygen. but had the effect of making anything else she tried to do a magnet for speculation about her life. Her Spotify podcast, for example, was decoded for clues and hidden messages about the royal family, even though it was presented as a vehicle for this one's wife to tell other people's stories, not her own. Her documentary with Harry could be seen as a "here's everything you might want to know, now can we move on" exercise that backfired. See the frenzied and debated car chase that accompanied this one's wife's other attempt to go to a gala earlier this year, fueled in part by her total absence from public view in the wake of Harry's memoir. Of course, what this publication fails to understand, as I've explained previously, that her hiding, in effect, or not being seen in public view was part of hanging Harry out to dry. See the video about that. Which brings us to Project Normalisation, where this one's wife and her team seem, once again, to be trying to retool the narrative around her, i.e. assert control. First, by making her visible enough that it's not a spectacle every time she leaves her own house, and second, by situating her firmly back in her old milieu, Hollywood, a place where she'd already built a fully formed identity long before she ever met a red-headed guy for drinks at a London members' club. Once again, this article is trying to support her, but what it fails to understand is that so much water has gone under the bridge, the shark has truly been jumped, that so much has happened that no matter what she attempts to do, people just see through her. As I explained in my video, will she ever win people over? The answer is no. Too many people dislike her, and too strongly. Philanthropy of the quasi-royal variety is still part of the equation, as we saw when she and Harry visited a military base to mark Veterans Day last week, but less so than in their early post-working royal life. That first year they focused on charitable endeavours, perhaps in an effort to prove that they could still make a difference without the royal machine behind them, and that they weren't the selfish, fame-hungry holiday wannabes that they were accused of being. As was hinted when she didn't attend the coronation in May, it seems clear that this one's wife is working hard to leave her royal chapter far, far behind her. Though, of course, what this publication fails to point out is that she still clings to using the title Duchess of Sussex, as we saw on the Jumbotron when she attended the hockey earlier this week. And it appears that she's looking to embark on a new chapter that feels remarkably like her old one, unapologetically so. In effect, what she's trying to do is return to being a celebrity. But the fact is, she doesn't stand for anything. She has no substance. And this article is interesting, as it's a clear attempt to nullify some of the arguments that are advanced in relation to her, but it fails. Why? Because it fails to account for so many of the other things that she has done, and fails to account for the fact that so many people have seen through her, there simply is no going back. This one's wife might be thrilled to be back, but all she has done is retreat to a position of celebrity. And it's not going to achieve anything for her, because plenty of people, they haven't forgotten what she's done, they recognise what she is, and they see straight through her. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.